Welcome, everybody, to the B.R.O Podcast, where we talk about Christian topics, different things that make you think, and maybe a little put of a little pebble in your shoe. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the movie The Sound of Freedom. And I am one of the co hosts, Joe, along with my brother in Christ and in real life, Justin. How's it going?
It's going well. Besides, like we were talking about being sick,
Yeah,
we caught all three variations of sickness in the house. We caught flu, COVID, and strep throat, all in one weekend. So it's
yeah,
been quite a journey this
man,
past week and a half.
that's not no good. That's no good. Well, here's the thing, when we decided to do this episode, Sound of Freedom, we had to actually, do a little bit of an audible because of my work schedule. So here we are coming back at it. So Justin, The Sound of Freedom, it was a popular movie.
hmm
It came out, was it 2023? Was that the year it came out?
Let's see here. The release. Now, it was it was created 5 years before the release.
Yes, yes.
But yes, it was released last year. That's when it hit theaters.
Yeah. And when it was released, it was actually released kind of crowdfunded. You know what I mean? It was like, there was a big thing that was going on trying to get this movie out there. It was actually debuted alongside the same week as Indiana Jones. And some of the things that I had researched when we after watching the film was is that the media really was kind of like confused by the fact that it did better than Indiana Jones at the box office.
Yeah, because they had some really big movies coming out. Indiana Jones, which I'm a
Hmm.
big Indiana Jones guy, and Oppenheimer was another one that come out. And there's a couple other films I can't think of right now that I was thinking about earlier that was released around that time. And not only did it outbeat Indiana Jones, but it competed with Oppenheimer and all the other films around that time too. Like you said, it was a when you look at the budget wise, it was a much smaller budget,
Hmm.
but in comparison of maybe the genre, like when I say not genre, but the production or the distributing, it was just typically high end for maybe
Yeah.
the people that it was trying to reach.
And I did not watch it in theaters. I actually watched it here recently.
Yeah.
And I think you had seen it beforehand. But here's the thing: is that the topic of it is kind of where we're going to go into. Is that what is this movie about? Is it a true story? What's some other things that are going into it? So Justin, help me start off with this. So what are some things that we need to know before we actually talk about the movie itself?
Well, we need to know that before going into this, it's a real subject, and it's a touchy subject, and it's something that deals with people all across the globe. This isn't just something that hits home here, but it hits all countries, it hits all cultures, it hits all beliefs, and it's something that we shouldn't take lightly. It's not something that we just maybe somebody should just go in and watch it and just walk away and take nothing from it. It's very impactful,
Mhm.
and the situation is really serious. So,
Yeah. So here's the thing. There is a well-known actor that plays in this movie. I think there's several actors in there that you'll recognize, but the main one is Jim Caviezel. Most people know Jim Caviezel
hmm
from one, The Passion of the Christ, but also,
hmm
one of my favorite films was The Count of Monte Cristo, right? He was in that, and I was just a huge fan of his. I mean, I think he's a great actor. I mean, as acting goes, I think he does a really good job. But this movie is about an individual. And Justin, who is that individual?
it's Timothy Ballard.
Okay.
Timothy Ballard was a guy who was in special ops for many years. When I say special, like operations with the police task force, and his objective was to capture pedophiles and also people in the known or secret black market sex trade.
Yeah. He actually worked for Homeland Security, and then
Yes.
they got him into this thing. And one of the reasons they said it, he says in an interview, was because they knew that he was a man of faith, that he could probably handle this kind of
hmm
stuff. Now we'll put a pin in that as we move on. But so the movie is is basically around this incident that Tim Ballard is involved in. Um, and here's the thing: there's going to be some spoilers in this. I think the movie's been out long enough, so if you're watching this and you haven't seen the movie, and you'd like to know, I would say that our first recommendation would be like, hey, if you're really worried about the spoilers, we're going to give some out. But on the flip side of it, you know, I think the movie, you're definitely going to need some discernment depending on who you are or, what you think. But before we get to that, I just want to lay those out there. So here's the thing. It is about Tim Ballard and what he done in a short, like a very specific time frame. And he gets involved in this. Now, Justin, let's talk about the cinematography of it, the way it looks. Man, I would have to say I would give this very good ratings on the way it actually looks. Would you
Yeah,
not?
yeah. I mean, it was a pretty crisp film, um, in the sense of you don't have to have a lot of money in production.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say you don't have to have a lot of money in films to have
Okay.
good production or good, like you said, cinematography. The money, the money being used properly in cinematography is what's important.
Gotcha.
It can be a low budget film, but still have good production in that cinematography. I can't say it for some reason tonight, but in that cinema effect that really draws people in.
Sure.
A lot of people, there's two things or there's three things in the film: is having a known actor, having well acting in that film, and also the production itself of how it looks for people. People like things to look a certain way. They like it to be crisp or real gritty looking. They want high produced films, and so this movie, for what it was kind of pumped out to be, like you said, faith based. There has an undertone where some people say it's a faith driven movie. Typically, you don't think of high produced films when you think of that. Now, there's a person though that was involved in that, and his guy is Mel Gibson. Mel
Yeah.
Gibson is close friends with the guy, like you said, that plays Tim Ballard in the film, who's the one that also he gave us uh,
The
the what
passion.
was it, Passion of the Christ, and
Yeah.
so we see Mel have some money and backing behind him, and we see that being pumped into this film. So it's very well produced.
Yeah. So, we'll see that, in I think the script, it really was well done. I feel like, anybody that's watching a movie and would come across this by accident, not knowing not knowing the topic, just kind of flipping through there like, hey, I recognize this actor. I would like to watch it. They're not going to be let down by, like, oh, it's
Hmm.
crazy, like a cheesy B film movie. I like those kinds of things, not for everybody else. But, so on those marks, I can't say that it was a bad film. You know what I mean? On just the aesthetics of it. I think that, people are going to be like, okay, and we see that as the way that it tracked alongside, a major box office like Indiana Jones, right? It was able to contend in that same realm. But now we need to get into like some of the things that, well, not just some. We need to get into what this movie is talking about. Now, if you happen to watch our podcast in the, not in just the live, but any time like that, the topic of the movie is graphic. So, we're not going to talk about any specifics, like that, to try not to be graphic. But in case there is someone listening that shouldn't, please pause it or, turn it down or something like that. So in this, it is talking about Tim Ballard and his pursuit to take down and to retrieve a child, right, or children, I should say, in these pedophilia rings that are going on. He works closely alongside the United States, but in this, something goes on, and the U.S. government pulls the plug, and he's like, "Well, I got to come back," and he doesn't want to come back. He wants to stay and retrieve these children. Now, Justin, that sounds all well and good. I mean, I can't really fault anything in there. Can you?
Hmm. No, so in the sense of like, are you asking about like Tim Ballard and his motives behind capturing? Uh,
Well, no, not so necessarily. I mean, just the when we see someone wanting to do something like that, that seems like a righteous thing to do, a good
it
thing to do.
it does. I mean, that shows, the imago Dei of us, right?
Sure.
That
Yeah.
desire for true justice, and
Hmm.
we see that, oozing out of this film. And like you said, putting a pin in it earlier about faith and that component. It's a very broad word to use sometimes, faith, and like we said, we'll go down that here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, we that is a good thing for him to think of other people more than himself is the component of this movie, and you see that that's brought in early on. Not to, of course, you can't not do a review without having some type of spoiler involved to a degree. But there's a takeaway in the moment where they're the first, I'd say 45, 50 minutes of it, because it's a little over 2 hours, um, is them just laying out the framework of what he's doing. The,
Yeah.
the capturing of the pedophiles and then the beginning searches of that and what that looks like and the uniformity.
Yeah.
Um, but like it's it's really beautiful to see somebody really think of other people. And there's that moment in the very beginning where he's talking to a gentleman and they're talking about, like capturing these pedophiles, and then there's this thought process of, but what if it was my child? You
Right.
know what I mean? That's overseas getting sold. Because in this movie, it's not that children are um, just being harmed. They are being harmed. They're being harmed in multiple ways. It starts off by them being captured, and I think,
Right. Right.
the first 10 minutes of the movie is probably the most intense. And
Sure.
and the
Yeah.
way they do it, they lightly brush over these things gently to a degree that, um, I like to eat popcorn. I like to snack I like to watch movies and enjoy myself as I watch a movie. And I don't know why I thought I could go into this movie and enjoy myself and
Yeah.
enjoy eating something. I'm sitting with my wife, and the first time we tried to watch it, we couldn't watch it. We could the first 10 minutes of it, we couldn't watch it. She's like, I'm not ready to watch this. She's like, you know what I mean? I'm not mentally prepared for this. I was like, yeah, I'm not either. I started getting a little nauseous. We went back to it and we muscled through it. But I remember sitting down there multiple times. We watched it down in the living room. And I said, I don't know if I can finish this. I said that multiple times. And, movies are supposed to be enjoyed,
Yeah.
and I can't say there was one point in time throughout this film where I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it. It actually
Right.
made me angry. It made me sad. Even at the end of it, like I was still angry and
Right.
sad.
Well, and that's good because we look at our thoughts going into the movie. I had very limited um, idea of what the movie was about. I kind of had an idea, kind of, because my wife and some of them had went and seen it in the theaters,
Hmm.
and but that it wasn't really like divulged. So I go into it, I felt pretty fresh, pretty just what I mean. There is no neutrality, but I'm just saying like I felt pretty neutral, like not knowing one way or the other. But Justin, what was your thoughts? I mean, did you have some preconceived notion of the film before you went into it? Your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that it was definitely going to talk about the sex ring, and slave ship and stuff like that. I just didn't think it would talk about it in the depths that it does, because you think of, films, faith-based type films where you hear that word getting brought in, that
Yeah,
it's usually something really, really corny, and it doesn't really tackle the topic, and it's just not well invested in. And so my
yeah,
thoughts going into it was it was going to be really cheap. It was going to be a waste of time.
yeah.
I I thought of it more. It was going to be a cheap version of like Liam Neeson's Taken.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Gotcha,
And I don't know if
gotcha.
anybody's ever seen those films. Liam Neeson's, I mean, a great actor, and those movies do talk about sex rings and stuff like that, abduction, and it's an action-based film. So I was like, man, it's going to be that, but it's
Sure.
going to be super. It's going to be super low budget and cheap. Like you said, B rated films.
Yeah, yeah,
And that was my takeaway from it. It wasn't going to be well acting. It wasn't going to have any big name actors in it. and it wasn't going to have great cinematography either.
Yeah, so here we are. We watch the film. I mean, and here's the thing: is that I remember as I watched the film, not having anything because we realized after the fact that hey, we're going to do this podcast over the review of this, and it was sold, I believe, to a lot of people as a faith-based film, as this is a, dare I say, a Christian film, right?
Hmm.
Here you got Jim Caviezel who's played Christ. He's been openly about his faith in the media. You know what I mean? And Tim Ballard, what I mean, has done interviews. I watched numerous interviews after the fact, but when I watched the film itself, what I mean, it definitely rung a bell of like, hey, there's some real things going on in the world, some serious stuff that I mean, that we can't ignore. Now, Justin, when we think about the whole thing as a whole, right? The film as a whole, the good, the bad, and the other. You know what I mean? It's really just a narrow picture of what's going on with a specific thing that takes place in the film,
Hmm.
right? And I think they do a really good job. But here's the thing: is that what do you think the most not the intense, because you kind of led on to that at the beginning of the film. Personally, I totally know what you're talking about there. But as a whole thing of the film, what do you think the main message is sending out through the whole film?
That there's things happening every day that we turn a blind eye to. That,
Okay.
when you see a prostitute walking up and down the street. I work in addiction, and I work with women who confess of living a lifestyle of that. And when you sit and you ask these women, and you start having these questions, it's called, it, in counseling, you do this to kind of build a framework to kind of understand who you're dealing with, to
Sure.
know what avenues to take. And I would say over 60% of the women that I deal with have been a part of that, what we say sex trafficking, whether it be early
Okay.
on
Yeah.
grooming or stuff like that. And so I think the main takeaway of this is the problem is bigger than what we think. It's not something that just happens in mud huts in ungoverned countries. It's
Yeah.
happening right under our nose. It's happening right next door. It's happening down the street. People are involved in this, and I'm not one of these conspiracy theorist people. I think there is a level of truth to even some of those ideas and concepts. I always hear that every joke has some truth in it, right?
Sure.
And
Sure.
so we do know that there is some big people that are involved in these sex trades. So I think the big takeaway is it's very real. Just like we talk about
Yeah.
abortion, it's involved in that,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
equally yoked into that of just the debauchery of children, just attacking the imago Dei,
Yeah.
and I think that we don't talk about it, and we don't.
Yeah.
One thing is we just don't talk about it, but we don't do anything about it. It's one thing to I'm gonna put 10% of
Yeah.
whatever onto something and donate it, but like we're not actually doing something. We seen Tim Ballard actually did that. He stood up and actually went over to another country and started doing those things.
Yeah. And here's the thing: is that with all those things you said, I do agree. And the level of the accuracy of the film really depicts this, right? Because while there is some pushback, from the different news media saying like, "Oh, this isn't really how it is. This is Hollywood and all that." Look, I totally understand when you're watching a film, you're not watching actual events, right? That's just not the actual events, but it is have a measure of realism in there that tries
Mhm.
to be accurate to the events because they don't want to downplay it, or they don't also want to over the top it. So I thought it was very well brought a fact that I don't know nothing. I don't live in that world of trying to do what he did. You know what I mean, in that agency. But I would assume that it felt very realistic to me. That's a subjective thing for me personally because I don't deal with that. But as far as it goes, yes, You know what I mean? And so when we see these kinds of things take place, I think it's very very important for us to realize that the accuracy or the realness of the film really can help us to understand the severity of it, right, Justin? Like what you were talking about, like when it comes off comical, or if it comes off, um, I mean, just drama. Like it's just I've watched plenty of films that are just, the drama's there, but it's detached from the reality. The thing about this film is it brings you right up close to what is actually going on, and you have to think about it. I'm with you, Justin. When someone asked me about the film, I'm like, would I recommend it? And we'll get into that a little bit later. I mean, I would simply say that, when you say it's a good film, good film is not the way I would depict it. It's a film that definitely shines a light on a specific thing. Now we got about half an hour, and I think we've kind of talked about the overview and the accuracy of it, our thoughts about it. Maybe laying out some of the things that go on. It's little spoilers and stuff that we've done, but overall, we're going to say this is a well-made film about an actual event by actual person. They put some serious things in there, and it came across. Now, if this was just any other film, I would probably, like no problemo. Let's just move it right along. But me and my brother had talked about this. There's some things in here that they breeze right by us, and we don't realize what that is. So, you know, our thoughts on this is that yes, it was a good film. All right, we're gonna say film wise, it was a good film. We're not like me and my brother are not someone that would say like, hey, check us for every film rating. But I'm saying just as myself, I thought it was a good one. I think my brother thought it was a good one. But we have some thoughts and things that we need to think about, okay? Because there's a lot more to this film than meets the eye. And now we're going to start breaking down some of these things that, once we dug in, because we watched the film, took it in, and now we're going to look into it. So, Justin, first and foremost, what are some of the things that we need to start breaking down?
Well, just so people know, we're going to be starting a movie review. We're going to be
No,
called no, just a reform reviews, and we'll give tulips.
tulips. How
We'll
many
give
tulips?
yeah, how many up to five tulips. Uh, and we'll have to think of something if it's negative. We'll give like little Arminian. We'll give like Jacob
Daisies,
Arminius.
little
Yeah,
daisies.
we'll daisies. You'll give
Yeah,
daisies. That's
yeah.
good. So, what is it? You want to know some of the
Well, yeah,
like
we're
key
gonna we're gonna get
takeaways?
in. We're gonna get into the brass tacks of it here
Yeah.
because there's a lot of things that folks that honestly I didn't know. I watched it. I was like, wow. And then when I'm like, okay, we need to really dig in and pull back the carpet and look
Yeah.
underneath here. So we'll start off with some of the things, Justin, that people really need to know about this film.
So that first off, there was only two kids that they really focused on in the movie, and I believe the whole outreach. I think they saved collectively over 120 kids. Now I know that in the film you'll see that where there is more towards the end that you see that are rescued, but that's still not even a large amount. Yeah, a large amount of the children that were rescued in the process. So that's one thing. And the movie does, I believe, have a pretty accurate component to it in the sense of realism. I think the first, if you get a chance to watch this movie, the first 15 minutes really lays out realism, whether it's the father that we see early on, and then we also see the cyber issues. And so I would say positive wise, it's a well needed movie. This is something that I believe that everyone should see at some point in time in their life. And I also see that it's highly accurate for what it's worth within a 2 hour framework.
Sure,
You only got 2 hours to work with this. And I think that the media and some other organizations are kind of like dousing it down and kind
yeah,
of putting their thumb against it when they only have 2 hours to tell a story of
sure,
something so huge. Now, the negative components to this, which are really big, and I've not seen any Christian um, people podcast talk about this. There's actually a guy, and I'm really disappointed with him. Is a guy named Alan Parr, and he said this was a Christian movie. And taking that as face value and listening to somebody like that. Look, we all get things wrong. Joe and I get things wrong.
all
We're
the time.
laymen all the time. This was concerning, though, is when we hear him say that, I took it for what it was. But when we begin to study these things and look into these things, it was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Now, what I'm saying is Romans 1 tells us that we're suppressors of the truth. Even
Yes.
Hitler told truth, right? Even the wicked do righteous things, right? Because they can't help. It's like putting a balloon, or not a balloon, but a beach ball underwater, right? And holding that truth under, right?
Yeah.
Living on self. Eventually, that ball is going to pop up, and you will do righteous things because we can't help because the imago Dei in us. So
Yeah.
we see when we begin to study it, Joe and I begin to look and see that the guy Tim Ballard does make some comments throughout the movie about faith.
Yes.
Now, you said that he was a man of faith, and he also says something that really pulls at people's heartstrings. And I really wonder if he actually said it throughout his saga of saving kids, was when he said, God's children are not for sale.
Yeah.
Now, that is a pretty broad term because you would have to say which God. So we begin to look into this, and we come to find out a few things. Tim Ballard is no longer involved, but he was involved in the LDS Church. He was a member of the LDS
Yeah. He
Church.
was. Yeah. He was a Mormon. Yes.
Yeah, he was a Mormon. Now, I don't know what he believes now. There's a reason why he got kicked out. He got kicked out of the Mormon congregation. But we also know that Angel Studios, who did not produce the movie, but they distributed the movie after years of it being done. They are a monstrous, like
Huge. Huge.
huge, huge Mormon uh, uh, producing company.
Hmm.
There's some other things I'm maybe missing out on,
Well,
Joe, that
yeah.
you can
Here,
think of.
the thing that was a red flag when because we went in. I wanted to watch these videos of their interviews from their mouth, not from us. Seeing some clip or something like that. And the one thing that really caught me off guard was I heard 3 or 4 times Tim Ballard himself in interviews talking about like he was overseas and he got his job was on the line and he's like his wife called him up and said I want you to quit your job and I want you to save the kids. And I'm like, well, that's I mean that this is before I knew that he was a member of the LDS, the Mormon
Hmm.
Church.
Hmm.
But what caught my ear was he said this in multiple interviews, and you can source check this, is that his wife called him up and said, quit your job, go save the children because I believe that my salvation is
Hmm.
in danger. And when you hear that as a Christian, you're going, you definitely, the brakes should be squealing. You'd be like, whoa, 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 whoa. How can your salvation be in danger because you didn't do anything to earn it? But now, if you are earning your salvation, which the Mormon church teaches, then maybe that's why she felt that it was he needed to do this. Other things I noticed was that, the way that he was talking about it and the agencies, well, agencies, not the right word, the different people that were interviewing Tim and Jim Caviezel, right? So I was very interested. So not being naive of this, I assumed that Jim Caviezel was a Christian, right? And for our Reformed brothers and sisters in Christ, when I say this, will not be a shock, but maybe to other Christians that listen to us when we say this, they might be like, "What?" But it's the fact is that Jim Caviezel is Roman Catholic, right?
Hmm.
And Rome teaches a false gospel. Okay, that's just the short and the sweet of it. I mean, we could go into a whole explanation of yes, Christians are in the Catholic Church despite the
Hmm.
teaching and can be saved despite what's being taught. But if you follow what Rome teaches, then you're not a Christian, right? I mean, that's just the nut. So I don't know Jim Caviezel personally, and I don't know, but if he believes what Rome teaches, and for everything I can see, he does, you know what I mean, that would put him out of what Christianity teaches. So you have two men. You have two men here, right? The actor and the actual source material from what's going on, and both of these men are representing a faith-based
Hmm.
movie. Now, here's the thing: it is, in all fairness, a faith-based movie when you talk about their faith. You know what I mean? I think that's a fair thing. They can say it's a faith-based movie, but what tends to happen in Christian circles, right? When they say faith-based movie, you're like, oh, it's a Christian movie, right? That's the idea that gets put out there. So, Justin, is this a Christian movie?
No, I mean, now there's Christian principles in there, just like we've
Sure.
talked about in Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yep.
Atheists out there promoting, pro-life agendas.
Yep.
Those are Christian
Sure.
principles. I would just say the foundation, the principle would be the pillar, and the foundation would be the belief upon it resting. And so we would say that is it's a perverted principle. It's one that has been masked by hidden agendas.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, you have a lot of people that are pushing their agendas on there. And that was something that they pumped into the minds, is they knew that Christians would come see this movie if they sold it a certain way. And I would say, I would tell Christians, go see the movie, right? Because it shows the depravity of humankind, and just the grips. When you think of Judas and him portraying, Jesus with a kiss, just the mockery of that, and just how wicked that is. We see what the
Sure.
wickedness of the world, and how they are betraying the Imago Dei with a kiss, like they're doing these wicked things to the world. And so I would say, even though it's not a Christian film, um, we do need to go see this and educate ourselves with this. Now, it's one thing for us to educate ourselves with this, and it's another thing to promote the company that's doing it. And I get it. When we're going out, you're seeing the movie, you're paying that company who made the movie, and
Yep.
that does happen. But I also think, saying, "Hey, appreciate the movie, but you also need to repent." You have Mormons, and then you have Roman Catholics who not only produced, distributed, endorsed, but they have their beliefs fabricating and main veining through all of these things. So when they say God's children aren't for sale, or they make other comments throughout the movie of you know loosely scripture based style, what they're doing is they're trying to woo and tickle the ears of Christians. And so I shame on them for saying that, doing those certain things to pull people in. But I would say it's not a Christian movie. Now, like you said, it's a faith based movie, absolutely. But every movie is a faith based movie.
Sure.
Every movie
Sure.
that's ever made is a faith-based movie. And what do I mean by that? The complete confidence in whatever God it is you believe in is the foundation of whatever movie you're trying to make, you're promoting your agenda with.
Yeah. So when we see this, my first thing is that it's not a Christian movie because, you know, the Tim Ballard is not a Christian. Okay,
Hmm.
right, and it's based on his story. Now, I want to put a little caveat in here. I want people to think about this: is that do we not engage in the world with people that have different views of us? Absolutely. Should we have friends that are LDS? You should. You should want to love them and share the gospel with them. Um, and here's the thing: is that are people, like Justin had said earlier, going to do things that are not Christian, that are still glorifying God? Like as in the Imago Dei, giving honor to helping those and doing those things. Absolutely. But when we say Christian film, there is a underlining thing about that, right? And could there have been Christians that worked on the film? Absolutely. Could there have been Christians that think that the topic you know was something that needs to be talked about? Absolutely. But me and Justin want to make sure that you understand that what makes it a Christian film is really the nuts and bolts of it, the really the guts of it, right? Because if you reduce all this stuff down and you go, hey man, this Tim Ballard's a really, I really like, maybe you're not a person that goes to church, or you're not saved, you're not a Christian, right? And you start watching this movie and it really like kicks you in the chest, and you're like, man, and I want to really look into this Tim Ballard guy. I mean, I really got a lot of respect for what he's doing. I want, and you think he's a man of faith. That is going to lead you to a false gospel, right? It is,
Mm.
right? If you think, oh, hey, I'm going to check out his church, or his former church, I should say, right? So we need to keep those things in mind. But also, what we need to keep in mind is that, you know, we are able to watch things, right? Romans, Justin, if you want to qualify me here, I believe it is 13. Romans 13 talks about that we have Christian liberties, right?
Hmm.
I could be wrong. I think I could be wrong about the chapter, but we have Christian liberties. But I would highly recommend. Justin says, yeah, watch the movie. Me, my recommendation would be is that if you watch the movie, go into it with discernment, right? If you feel like discernment is something that you struggle with, you know what I mean? Maybe watch it with somebody that does you feel like has good discernment, or maybe watch it with a group of people and then talk about it. That I think those things are good. You don't want to veer away from things. But there was another movie that I had watched in the theaters because I was kind of looking forward to this one, and it was called Nefarious, right? Also made or produced or in that vein from Angel Studios, right?
Hmm.
And my wife hated the movie. Just total. She went there because she loves me, and we watched the movie. And there's a lot of dialogue, and enjoyed the dialogue. At the end of the movie, right? They're on a talk show host, and that talk show host is Glenn Beck, right?
Hmm.
For those that don't know, Glenn Beck is a Mormon, right? And I remember talking to my brother right afterwards, or very shortly after, talking about it. I'm like, I don't know if I would want to recommend the movie. You know what I mean? If they're going to promote the Mormon aspect on the end. My thought is this, is that, listen, every film that you've ever watched, or probably watched, there has been probably a Mormon or a Hindu or a Muslim that's worked on set that's been a part of that, right? There's tons of stuff in the world that are promoting all kinds of agendas. My takeaway is you really need to go into it with discernment. You need to be like you need to be thinking that they are trying to persuade you with an idea. Now, the idea in the Sound of Freedom is that children are being sold into slavery and abused in many different facets, right? And that we need to stop that. I, 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 I would agree as far as it goes with someone that says that. But here's the thing, Justin. Me and you can both agree with an atheist about saving children in the womb, right? But we agree on that foundation, but we're not going to agree on their ultimate worldview. And I think people need to understand that. But the problem is that we can go in this thing and we can get reeled in. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, like they can reel you in with some of this stuff. And I just say, go in with caution, right,
Hmm.
Justin? So one of the things that we say is this movie for all ages?
So, um, my oldest, especially my two oldest, they're 12, and when I say maturity, I mean when it comes to those things, they have a pretty solid response to those things. We
Hmm.
have a lot of we have conversations often about roles in the church, outside the church, for men and women. We talk about sexual design. We talk about just all aspects of life, different types of sins. Like we go really in depth. So I would feel comfortable with my two 12-year olds, me watching it with them. Now, does that mean that it wouldn't be uncomfortable? I think it'd be really uncomfortable for them, and I think it'd be hard for them to grasp at that certain age. Aiden had watched Nefarious with us, and you could see. I mean, he was intrigued by it. Still kind of confused him a little bit,
Sure.
because I think maybe some of the language and the style and just some of the things, but he understood it for the most part, and he enjoyed it. I think he enjoyed more of the conversing more
Yeah.
than anything, the debating between the A,
Yeah.
the A character and the B character. Um, but I wouldn't suggest anybody's children to watch this. I think this is something that a young adult or older, somebody that is somewhat sound and grounded,
Yeah.
because it's a very overly intense film. It really, I mean, from the beginning to the end, there's no chill factor in
Right.
this movie, and I think that it can just be a lot for somebody, especially at a young age. So
Yeah. So that's
I
me.
would allow my children, but that doesn't mean that they would watch it.
Yeah. So I'm probably more on the more cautious end.
Yeah.
Like I said, we have liberties. My children would tell you that I'm probably more strict with watching stuff than and I find that myself being that way because I know personally that there is always an agenda being promoted out there, and no matter what. And sometimes dad's not clever enough or smart enough to know what that is. So I always
Mm-hmm.
try to err on the side of caution. Now, here's the thing. I wouldn't recommend it for children because of the topic or the subject matter. But
Mm-hmm.
what I would say is that what I mean, like it is probably a film that everyone should eventually try to ingest. You know what I mean? Just from the fact that you can't get away from the topical matter of it. That's one thing that I think that whether that a Roman Catholic or a Mormon did this, regardless of that, this topic and issue is a serious enough issue that as Christians we need to take it serious, right? And we need to engage with. One thing that took me by surprise was is that once I'd done the research after this, and me and Justin kind of dove into this, I realized I'm like, hey, why are we not as the body engaging more into these kinds of topics? And I feel like they get kind of left in the wayside, don't you, Justin?
Yeah, I think it's something that happens more often than not. Not saying that people are getting
Mhm.
like abducted. Maybe the abduction. We do know that people get abducted in America. It's usually bigger cities, and I think maybe because we live in the Ashland area, it's probably like one of the safest areas to live in. Especially around, I
Yeah.
would say Kentucky.
Hmm.
But when you get into bigger cities, people get abducted all the time. But I think it's something that, you know, the core of it is a devious sexual motivation, a perversion. Um, and so I think that happens often. And I think it's one of those things. They call it the hush in the family, like the family secrets. And I think a lot of people go untreated for these things most of their life. And like when we see it kind of uh, uh, developing into other sexual behaviors. So I think it's very, very important that everybody experiences this. It's something that needs to be talked about. And I
Yeah.
think it's a big wound because it shows our failures
Yeah.
as a society, that we are failing in this component. The church is failing in this component, this arena of not assisting in this. And you know, we do spend a lot of time as Christians, as abolitionists that defend life. But there's one thing of defending life, and there's another protecting life as they're in life. So I think this is where we fail sometimes. Is we save life, but then life gets abducted and harmed, and it's going to happen. It's not something that we on this side of heaven can stop. But what we can do is we can combat it and we can fight back. And I think
Yeah.
that movie really gives us. Yeah, when I left the movie, when I was here at the house, like I said, I left with anger and sadness, but I also had this readiness, where I wanted to just, all the artillery in the world, go ahead and load them up right? Get ready and let's go overseas and let's go next door and let's save all these children. That the movie catapulted that for me. It really motivated it, really built that adrenaline like, okay, there's children out here that need help. And how dare me sit here and go to work every day and eat my sandwich while somebody is in a room right now being harmed
Sure.
against their will.
Well, here's the thing. It made me think that to be I'll use some words from Jeff Durbin to talk about being consistent, right? You need to be consistent, and if you want to be an abolitionist, you need to be a consistent one. And it's not just taking care of the unborn; it's taking care of the unborn and the ones that are born right now. And those, and I think we want to be an abolitionist in the fact that we want to put a stop to this completely as well. You know, not just in the beginning, not just in the middle, but all way and every way in between. So, that's our take, our review of the Sound of Freedom. I'm gonna give it what three and a half tulips, Justin. We'll give it three and a half tulips. You know what I mean? Um, what do you say? You gonna give it more than that? You're gonna go
I think 3.5 tulips and a daisy will be no. I think three and a half tulip. Yeah, it's a solid movie. It's very educational, and like you said, it's not a Christian movie.
no.
It doesn't have Christian agenda, and we see that. I think for what it is, it's well produced. But I think this is where young Christians get kind of pulled under, the tides of these kind of agenda movies. Like, oh man, see these Mormons, man, they hold to the same views we do. There's no difference, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so we see this has been happening for a while with Angel Studios and Mel Gibson and the Roman Catholic Church is the Chosen segments, those shows, they're made, and helped and endorsed by Angel Studios. And we also have Nefarious, which you talked about, Glenn
yeah,
Beck,
yeah,
and now we have this, and we see that uh, this is a big wave that's hit the Christian community. And as much as I know that people really love that stuff, it's not biblical. Chosen is a whole nother discussion that we
yeah,
can have. That's a whole monster of itself. That I think that maybe we need to talk about one day, and that we really need to discuss with the community. As much as I think people really enjoy the show, talk about the inaccuracies and the concerns and the warnings behind that, and
yeah,
like you said, the under effects, like the guts of it. Like
yeah,
when you look at this show or this movie, it's not a Christian film because the guts of it isn't glorifying Christ. It isn't. It's not because he doesn't glorify Christ, because he doesn't love Christ and honor Christ. He does not worship the one true God.
yeah,
So at the when you reduce it down, his works in vain. You
yeah,
know, it's actually for self, because like you said, his wife, he'd worked in that field for so long, and then his wife was like, "You have to go help these children because I feel like my salvation's on the line." And that was actually on a TBN interview, which is TBN is and that's
yeah.
lightly, and it's me saying it lightly.
I know.
That is a unbiblical broadcast station. But I actually have the numbers written down. If you guys ever get a chance to watch it, Tim Ballard was interviewed. It was with TBN. It was the only interview that I know that he had done.
He's done
Uh,
several. He did several other
well,
ones. Yeah.
I'm saying with TBN.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And it was, I have down from the 3 minute mark to 3 minutes and 32 seconds. If I can find the link, I'll post it on here, where he said, my wife said that our salvation was being
Yeah.
jeopardized. I was like, so that right there shows you that, I mean, that's an unbiblical stance. So, like you said, great rating for what it was.
Sure.
Um, Err on the side of caution when watching it, though.
Yeah, and we got a little bit of time left, Justin. We'll take some questions if we
Yeah,
got anybody on right now.
got a couple
So if,
people.
yeah, if you got a question, maybe it's about the Sound of Freedom. Maybe it's just about something in general. I mean, even if it's not related, we love to take your questions and do that. We got a guest next week coming on. I believe that's Nate coming
Yeah.
on, and we're gonna release the title of that. But what I can say is that we're gonna be talking about the Independent Fundamental Baptist. He grew up in that, and we're going to be talking about some of the things that go along with that. So stick around for that one. We've also got plenty of other things in the chamber ready to come down the pike. So Justin, one of the things that I was very curious about, when in studying up on this Sound of Freedom is that as Christians, we need to take the art serious. And I think that
Hmm.
sometimes can get left in the side. CCM or contemporary Christian music, the film, the arts in general. If we go back and we look into the early Christendom, you see great Christians making fantastic art. And I think that's something that has fell by the wayside because when you think Christian movie, it's good is not really the quality. Good quality is not the first thing that comes to mind, and that's a shame because it should be just the opposite. When you
Hmm.
hear Christian movie, you be like, well, you could see the world going, well, I'm not a Christian, but man, they make really good movies, and
Hmm.
that's really what we need to be as believers. We need to be trying to help to push forward good solid Christian artists, and in every genre or capacity of art. You know what I mean? Even if it's radio, even
Hmm.
if it's music, everything. We need to really have good men and women, solid men and women of the faith producing art. Because that's what it's because I mean it's terrible that sometimes that you go watch a film and you're like, I could go watch a Quentin Tarantino film because he makes a good film, right? It's not something I would ever recommend anyone watching, but I can say, subjectively standing back that he is a filmmaker that makes quality films in the
Hmm.
cinema that cinema kind of way. And then why can't we be doing just the same high caliber in the Christian field, Justin?
Yeah. So I was my wife and I we were talking about Martin Scorsese and just like the movies he makes
Oh,
are
for sure.
just outstanding. Now
Yeah.
his agenda is terrible. It's wicked,
Right.
but like, it's very unbiblical. He did the Temptations of Jesus Christ, like that movie right there was wicked. I don't know if you ever seen it. I do not endorse anybody to see it. But like it's very well produced. The movie, The Silence,
Yeah.
which is
I remember. Yeah.
about Catholic priests. It's got Liam Neeson in it. It's got Adam Driver in it. Fantastic film. I enjoy it. I like the movie, but it's unbiblical. It's not Christian. Now it would have those tones. I can watch it. You can watch it. And there's other believers that we know can watch that with proper discernment and weep at people dying over there that are Christians. There's
Yeah.
Christians that were dying over there, but the
Yes.
men that they were portraying. And so, like you said, that um, Christian society, the church has failed when it comes to arts and drama and just all of those things. When the institutions that were brought over here, Harvard and all those great collegiate schools, were Christian principled schools. John Calvin, you know what I mean? Like those things were backed upon those things, and we see that liberal arts has literally gotten to liberal art. So like it's all been liberalized. It's anti-Christian. It's all secular. And what's happened is Christians are coming out of um, that liberal lifestyle, that unbiblical lifestyle, and they're coming into the true fundamental way of living, of Christian ways of living. What happens is they get real snug in that, though, and which we'll actually be talking about next week with Nate, is how almost like these components make us really stiff, where we don't want to be involved in anything. We almost become very Amish like. And what happens is our music sucks, our movies suck, the way we live our life sucks in comparison to other people, And
Yeah.
people go, ew, why do you want, and these things can be beautiful. Just
Yeah.
take the arts, whether it be skateboarding or graffitiing or making things. Why can't you take those gifts that God has given you that you're using to glorify the world and use that to glorify God?
Well, and I also think, Justin, that a lot of times is that, and this is just my view on it. I believe my brother would hold the same view. Is that, when we look at the post mill view, like me and my brother hold to, we see things falling into place, getting better, right? That's why we want to have better arts and better. We want to see that, glorifying God. But when you have that pre mill view, which seems to be in America the majority view, and I'm not knocking on my pre-mill brothers and sisters. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just simply saying, why polish brass on the Titanic, right? And that's the view that, when you look at people that tend to hold the post-mill view, we're wanting to bring the arts alive. We want to do those, and when you see on the reverse side of it, the pre-millers were probably more like, yeah, that's nice, but we don't win in the end.
And we
So,
do. We do
but
win
we
in
do,
the end.
yes, but we do,
This
yes.
these
But I'm
things are
saying that's their view,
his.
yes,
Yeah, no, these things are his. Like when you talk about music,
yeah,
music's God created music for us to use as a sense of worship, for us to harmonize, like in harmony with each other, to develop fellowship. Art is something that we should appreciate with each other and discuss, but also be a way to glorify God, whether it be baking cakes, whether it be making clothes. These things are gifts that God has given us to ultimately glorify Him to the Most High. And that's what we're saying is why not take back what's really His
yeah.
and use those tools to shape and chisel beautiful things that worship Him. I'm not saying make idols. What I'm
No,
saying is
yeah.
create things that is His creation to glorify Him, right? And I think that's where we I think Christians are so afraid to step out there and do these things boldly and really just show out. And like you said, I think it really has to do with that we lose down here. Nope, I don't need to live in that lifestyle. Nope, I don't need to be over there. We're not promoting you guys to go hang out in bars. You know what
No,
I mean? And go, clubs and stuff like that. What we're saying is get back in like to how God has really called us to be. Use the gifts that He's given us to really glorify Him and lift Him up to the Most High. The world does it all the time, right? Like you were talking about the movie filmmakers Scorsese and um, Quentin Tarantino. They make amazing produced films, but the root of it is heinous and wicked. Imagine if Christians, true Christians, were out there making films like that, but Christian undertones, really talking about these things and putting the biblical message behind that.
yeah, yeah.
Wowzers.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people in the film, especially, like it has to be one. It's like a one-trick pony. And
Mm,
I'm here to be honest with you. Like, if you've been a Christian at any length of time, and you've been a true follower of Christ, there's a lot to the faith, right? There's a lot. We all go through doubts. We all go through troubling times. I mean, God had told us very specifically that you will receive persecution, right? And you're going to see troubles and tribulation. And that's
mm,
just one aspect of it. It isn't always, like the miraculous, the miracles, and all those things. There's faithful men of God that, have just, went out there and swept a floor to the glory of God every day,
mm.
right? I mean, and here's the thing, and that brought glory to God. So sometimes we want to make films that have to be this over the top angels and the all that stuff. But like Justin was saying, when we talk about the really the linchpin or the anchor of this, if it is rooted in historic biblical Christianity, then it's going to glorify God. And really, at the end of the day, we want all things, whether we eat, drink, whatever we do, let it glorify God,
Yeah.
especially the arts.
The
right?
things that the things that we love to. I love to skate. And so the guy that owns a skating rink, we were talking about, opening a Christian skate night. Why not use the things that we love to do to amplify who God is, that He is holy,
Absolutely.
righteous, and just. And everything, if that's something you like to do, you like to cook, you like to clean, you like to whatever it is, sports, why not glorify God? You're playing basketball and the number you choose, right? They ask you, why did you choose that? And you're like, because Romans, whatever. You know what I mean? That's why I
Right,
chose
right,
that number.
right.
You use whatever it is, the things you enjoy to glorify God. And that's all we're saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, here's the thing is that, as we land the plane right here, we're going to be thinking about these things. We're going to be talking about these things, but know that these things are important, right? And we want you, as our listeners, to take something away with you. And we really do appreciate all the views that we get, all the comments. Listen, if you got any questions, comments, and you've watched this, we went 10 to 11. We usually go 9 to 10. You know what I mean? Me and my brother, we're just laymen. We got jobs. You know what I mean? We try to get out here and we try to do our very best. Hey, this is an avenue. You might want to start a podcast. Do it. Get out there and do it. Get out there and do it for the glory of God. So, next week we got a guest coming on. We got plenty of other great things. Justin, what's some wise wisdom to send them out with as we get ready to close down?
That the topic we discussed is very real, and there's very dark things that are still happening. Even though things are falling into place, these things are not to go unnoticed. God has called us to be good beacons of hope, but also to be warriors and to stand for righteousness and to attack the wicked of the world. So I would encourage people to educate themselves on these things and glorify God through all situations and do righteous.
Sounds great. Well, B.R.O Podcast, Thursdays at 9, unless we got to call an audible. My name's Joe. That's Justin. Let God bless you and keep you. Lord, we thank you all so much.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Y'all.